Return them, the 21st of September 2024. The Jews theologically are remarkably close to Islam. They have a concept of Tawheed, monotheism, that is total. God is one, indivisible, not a trinity, has no sons. God is one, cannot be divided. This in itself was enough that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was good to the Jews. Now we know that there were 3 tribes in Medina that, one after the other, had a falling out with the Prophet, peace be upon him. So we developed in our mind some kind of notion that he didn't like the Jews because they were Jews. And that couldn't be further from the truth, as I mentioned. When he came into Medina, he knew that he was entering what was largely a Jewish town. It wasn't a polytheistic town with a few Jews, it was the other way around. It was a Jewish town with a few polytheistic Arabs. And he knew that north of Medina, all the way to the border of Sham, Damascus, were Jews. All those towns that I mentioned before. And yet, we know this, that even after fighting against the 3 tribal groups within Medina, and that is over the authority of the oasis of Medina, it has nothing to do with the religious confession. He maintains good relations with those Jewish tribes all over, and in fact imposes upon them something called jizya. Now we know the rate of jizya because it was stated in our sources. Each Jewish person was to pay to the Prophet, peace be upon him, as part of the agreement with them the amount of 1 dinar per person, which is equal to 11.5 dirhams. That's it. And if you think about how much zakah the Muslims themselves were paying, boy, it paid to be a Jew. And in this greatly reduced amount, it was a soft and easy and accommodating amount. It was a political statement that you are contributing to the ummah, to the community. It wasn't designed to be an onerous or an exploitative heavy amount of taxation. So, to answer your question, the other monotheistic peoples were treated pretty well by the Prophet, peace be upon him. He was quite affectionate towards a monk, for example. All monks. In antiquity, a priest would shave the top of their head, and they have a strange ring of hair around the head. The Prophet, peace be upon him, thought it was very curious that they did this. He didn't stop them doing it, but he said to his people, when you go out in those expeditions and you come across them, don't harm them. Leave them alone, because they are devoted to God. They are devoted like you cannot believe. They put themselves away in those cloisters. They deprive themselves of the earthly pleasures to be close to Allah. Leave them alone. And so, that was the position. And likewise, for example, during the Battle of Khaybar, he fights against the Jews there and then he imposes upon them. They come to him and say, look, can we cut a deal and stop all this fighting? He says, yes, of course, but you have to pay the jizya. They say, we will pay it. Then they say to him, you know, you have taken our holy books, the Torah. The Prophet, peace be upon him, says, what do you mean? He then sends his men out to find them and says, return them. They are the books of God. Return them. He doesn't say, these are terrible books, you should stop reading them, because they are the books of Islam as well. They are the books of Revelation, and he's upset that his people had done something with them. So they quickly recover and hand them back to the Jews of Khaybar. It is actually quite a beautiful moment. The 10th of October, 2024. Your knee might bend. However, when it is God standing in front of you and in front of all the prophets, including Jesus, if you think that Jesus is God, your knee will not bend for Allah, who created Jesus and was not himself created. God created Jesus. Jesus' knee will bend to God. But those who called Jesus or any other human God will not be able to kneel or prostrate to God when he brings us all back to life. Jesus will be brought back to life after he dies. There's no question about it. And he will be brought back to life by God, and he will kneel and prostrate to God. Those who call Jesus God are blasphemers. Nothing about that is untrue. Tolerated. How dare you say God bless you when you've blasphemed him already? God would never come in the flesh. He is far greater than to be contained within the world he created. Why don't people understand that greatness also means that he is far above being comparable to a human being? Do you not realize that Jesus himself is scared of God so much that he will need to provide an account for people who had called him God or even his son? God is far above being compared to humans or being contained within his creation. There is no doubt that people will all die, but God does not die. This is proof that Jesus is not God, since you believe he died on the cross and God cannot die. He is the source of life, and he gives life and he takes life. He is the source of life, and he gives life and he takes life. There is no life without him, and because of him we have what we call life. Jesus is the way for people to believe in God, but our generation is making it difficult to understand the difference between creation and creator. God is the creator who was not created. Jesus was a creation of God. God only told Jesus the word be, and Jesus was. God is far above being compared to a creature. He cried when the Jews and the Israelites called him Son of God and said God had come to dwell with his people. It is their blasphemy that many of you still have in your beliefs. Beliefs are based upon evidence, otherwise they are blind in this life and in the hereafter. Think. God will judge you and me, and he will also judge Jesus and call him to question for your action and calling him something he is not. Jesus is only a servant and a messenger of God. He will be sent back to earth in his second coming. You would die right when you see him if you think he is God or his son. Why don't you understand? He is special in that his breath kills blasphemers. You would be blaspheming God if you approach Jesus calling him the Son. What would be left to you is to be called a Satan, just as Jesus called his disciple a Satan. You're no better. Jesus would say, "Go away from me, I do not know you," because he will not even think of interceding for people who called him a deity when he is clearly human.